Hello, listeners. This is Dana Marie Kennedy with AARP Arizona, and you are tuning into Arizona Desert Voices podcast. Today, we are going to talk about how social connection can help your money, health, and happiness. We want to discuss why connection is becoming one of the most important conversations around healthy aging. We want to explain the difference between being alone and feeling lonely. And we also want to share how Arizona offers unique opportunities to connect through volunteering, lifelong learning, local events, advocacy, and community services. Today, I want to welcome our guest, Brenda Holt, Senior Associate State Director at AARP Arizona, and Dr. Len Kirschner, past Director at Arizona Healthcare Cost Containment System Access, and also past President of AARP Arizona. So first of all, I'm going to go ahead and start off with how connected do you feel right now on a scale of 1 to 10? Brenda, I'll have you go first, and then Dr. Kirschner.
I'm going to say right now, connected wise, about a 9.
Yeah?
I'll leave that 1 open, but I'm at a 9. I'm always connected.
Well, that's wonderful. Now, is that connected in person or connected virtually or both?
It's both. And then, of course, my neighbors and, my friends and family, even out of state. Yes, I'm connected.
Great. And what about you, Dr. Kirschner?
I'd really call it a 10. We moved into a continuing care community 3 years ago, and we found friends that we've known in the past and new ones we've made, and it's quite connected. And I have stayed connected over the years. One of the things you might find interesting, I still have friends from first grade.
Wow.
We were 6 years old when we met at PS 117 in New York City. And we talk on a regular basis with them. They're fun to talk with. They're scattered all over from Long Island to South Carolina, to Arizona, to a variety of places where they've ended up. But staying connected with your old friends is really a great way to stay involved.
Mm-hmm.
That's wonderful. And what if one of the most powerful tools for better health wasn't a medication, diet, or fitness routine, but simply spending meaningful time with other people? Could you talk about that, Brenda?
Yeah, I think it's very important, to stay connected and medicine. That's medicine for the soul. They can make you laugh, they can make you cry, but staying socially connected, I think is key. Yep, I do think that's key.
And what about you, Dr. Kirschner?
Yeah, over the last several years, there have been a number of articles in New England Journal of Medicine, Journal of American Medical Association, talking about social connection and how that is as important as physical activity and all the meds you might be taking at our age. I'm 90. I'm not a kid anymore. And I take very few medicines. But my social connections are my health way of working. And so that's, I think, really an important part of it. And the indications are that a social connection is more important than almost anything else you do. And if you're isolated, that's, in terms of your longevity and your health, that's worse than smoking a pack of cigarettes a day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know that, probably one of the times that I felt the loneliest in my life was during COVID. And I lived alone. I wasn't married yet. And I had a dog. And I had always, been this pretty much single my entire life. And I always had this great group of triathlon friends and running friends. And, that's what we did. We would meet and go run or bike or swim or race or racecations. And then without any notice, my life shut down. And I still had, my work, and we figured out how to try and stay connected virtually, but it just wasn't the same. And I will tell you that, that life experience really changed me because I realized maybe I want to find a life partner. So I actually made that a priority. And, coming out of COVID, I decided to go ahead and try dating again. And I did meet my lifelong partner.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel very lucky. And so as far as, being connected now, I feel I've got a great life partner and still activities. I never did return to the triathlon community after COVID, But I ended up starting to hike more and do other things. So I think that, it's really important, and I see so many people, move to Arizona later in life. And so the next question for you, Brenda, is we know we have members that have retired here from all over. What are we doing at AARP to try and build social connections?
Well, one of the ways is through our volunteer pipeline. We get them in, to the pipeline to volunteer. They see us out at events and they become curious about, how to become active and how to become involved. We get them in the pipeline and they discover all kind of opportunities to volunteer that we provide, as well as they make friends among themselves. Even recently, within the volunteer team, they have come together and they've got their own book club going. And they meet and they do their book clubs. I have some volunteers that will go by and pick up other volunteers, and they've actually become friends, as a result of volunteering for ARP. So that is some of the ways I think that we're providing the social connections, not just as a volunteer base for our volunteer to do our work, but for them to get together to become socially active among one another.
And what about people who aren't volunteering for AARP? What about member engagement and what we're doing in the community for our members?
Well, we offer all kind of programming, for them. We have driver safety, we've got tax aid, we've got caregiving, we've got our fraud initiative. We've got a lot of our tabling events, a lot of our expos. So people come in contact with ARP based on the programming and services that we do provide within the community. And I think based on that and based on our experience out in the community, we come across a lot of different people. I think I've even kind of reported up so far this year, we've already engaged with about 10,000 new people that we hadn't engaged with otherwise, based on some of the places that we engage ourselves or we ingratiate ourselves into the community. And I think that's fantastic. So.
And Len, you moved into like a continuing care retirement community. And what do they do for the residents to keep you engaged?
Well, we have so much activities that sometimes we have to cut back and not go to them all. But, the problem is these kind of communities are expensive. And so for a great portion of the population out there, the retirement community I'm living in is not an option. So we need to find other things. I say this current issue of the AARP Bulletin has a good article on the power of connection. And you can go on the AARP website and find that. And I did. It's called arp.org/connect. And it's wonderful. It gives you lots of opportunity. But there are other things. I've retired. I know people who've retired and they say, that's all I want to do. I just want to sit home. And that's destructive. I retired from the Air Force and I immediately went to work, ran the state access. I retired from that. Went to work for Ross Rose Company. I retired from that. I worked for Mercer Consulting. I retired from that. Then I called over to ARP and spoke to Lupe. And Lupe said, hey, how are you? I knew her from my days in the state government. Said, come down and meet your predecessor, David Mitchell. And so I signed up with that. But I've been involved in lots of activities, whether it's American Legion or Luke Military Officers Association. I am a member of Health Service Advisory Group. I say get involved and stay involved as long as you possibly can. That is the greatest medicine you can conceivably think of. It's better than any pill you could take.
And Lynn, I know you're married to Peggy, who I just adore. And why don't you share with us some of the activities that she stays involved with? Because I know you guys do a lot of things together, but you do a lot of things separate as well.
She's a great caregiver also. And Dana, you know about that. And Brenda, you know about having your spouse as a caregiver.
Yes.
And you being a caregiver. Peggy is very involved. When we moved here, she became a guidance counselor at Dysart High School, and she has been involved with kids. What's fascinating, one of the students that she had early on in her years now lives in London. We have stayed close to him, his wife, and his kids all these years. That's important. And she is involved locally. we moved in here and there's a weekly men's group. Peggy said, why not a women's group? Well, haven't started one. So she and a friend started a women's group. They just met here on Wednesday, had a guest speaker. They had almost 50 local women coming to her women's group now. So that's important. And today, I was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. So she put together a Parkinson's group. Today, we have somebody who does music therapy for Parkinson's. We're going to be meeting with about 15 people doing that. So you're right. Having a spouse as a caregiver, that is critical. But so many of the people aging 50 and above, 65 and above, 80 and above are now single. And it's important for them to stay engaged. We know that population is going to grow. Over the next 30 years, the population of the United States is going to be over 65 is going to double. Mm-hmm. Same thing over 85. And so finding ways for them to engage is so critical. And I think AARP is one of the many organizations, it's not the only one of the many organizations working on that issue of connectivity.
And Dana, I want to say real quickly too that AARP actually prioritizes social connections, and it's because it's foundational to healthy aging. Okay, and we promote financial security. We promote physical health, but we also recognize that meaningful relationships and a sense of belonging are essential for people to thrive as they age.
Yeah. Sorry, I know somebody's phone was going off. Those are the things that happen when you do things virtually. You can't help it.
You can't.
Yeah, I know. I just recently lost my dad, and he my stepmother, just wonderful. And before he passed away, she had always volunteered with, not always, but since her retirement, she got really involved with her church. And so when we're talking about other organizations, I think it's really important to think about other organizations that fill your tank, as Amy Goyer would say. And for my stepmom, she, when my dad passed away, the church was amazing in taking care of my stepmom. And then they provided her, other opportunities if she wanted to volunteer. So she does the books for the church, and they have a food bank, and she, basically has to, log in how much food is donated to them. And so there's all kinds of organizations that can match your skill set to provide really meaningful opportunities. And so I think that, Len, you really touched on how important it is to find organizations that do that.
And it's not just AARP. There are multiple organizations. Last night on Horizon, another one was interviewed similar to what you've done, Dana, and what I've done over the years, talking about social engagement and how they reach out to help specifically seniors who are living alone. And that population is really critical, and we need to be very cognizant of their unique needs. When you have a spouse or a caregiver, that's one thing. But when you're living alone, that's a whole nother dynamic. We need to be careful about that. AARP is good at reaching out, but other organizations are also.
Yeah. And, this is not really relevant anymore, but just for the audience, just to think about, when was the last time you had a meaningful conversation with somebody outside your immediate household? And just like Len says, you keep in contact with, people that you've known since first grade. And I think that's really important, is that, we don't always have to physically see somebody to be socially connected. We can also connect with them over the phone. And, Brenda, you were talking about just social media as well. Mm-hmm. Another question is, how can strong social networks help people navigate major life changes like retirement? Either one of you.
It's critical. Mm-hmm. When you have a life change, and I've seen that many times at our age, where one of the spouses passes away. Then if you don't have those connections, then you're in a very dangerous place for your own health, because that isolation is going to have a major impact. So when you become single, make sure you can reach out to other people, either neighbors, family, friends, or set up new relationships. But that is such a critical part of surviving after losing a spouse.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think it helps you to, to navigate, if you have friends and family or people you can rely on, because there may be situations that you're going through that you don't know how to navigate. And maybe they've had that experience already, or they know someone who has, and they can put you in touch, as well to make sure that, you're not isolated and that you're able to make new friends and you're able to go on with your life, even facing those challenges.
Yeah. And I think you touched on this a little bit earlier, Lynn, but support groups. And I think that's, sometimes, we think about grief and loss, and sometimes making sure, because one, after you lose somebody, you're already going to be faced with depression and kind of feeling lost. And that's why those support groups can be really helpful. Do you know of any, local organizations that provide support groups that may be helpful for our listeners?
There are multiple support groups that provide that service. And really, I think going on the AARP website gives you, that I mentioned before, gives you a lot of those opportunities to go forward. But whether it's Rotary or whether it's the Chamber of Commerce, your local church, any of those will provide support groups, and they will look at you, say, okay, we understand that you've lost something critical in your life. Now let's see if we can improve what you have now moving forward, because you're going to, in some cases, you're going to be living in that environment alone. Now I'm living in a retirement community. We've had 2 weddings here.
That's good.
Really nice, And my 91-year-old brother-in-law got married a few months ago, and he lives in Newberg, Oregon. They're connected, and so connecting is critical, and it's possible even at advanced ages.
And I thought I was a late bride.
Never too late. It's never too late.
Never too late. But I will say, so if you think about the different diseases, they often have support groups. But if you were in hospice, at the end of your life, hospice always has a support group. In Arizona, we've got, the Alzheimer's Association. They have support groups. Duet, they have a wonderful program, Finding Meaning and Hope. So they help people navigate, people with dementia and Alzheimer's. And, there's a loss there, that actually happens before they actually lose the person. So I think looking at those
Alzheimer's can affect anyone. I don't know if you've seen the news about Sully Sullenberger, the hero on the Hudson, coming out now saying he's been diagnosed and he wants to reach out. So many people are reaching out. I try to do that, but Sully's a more famous individual than I am. But hearing him talk about how he's setting up opportunities for people to reach out and support others with dementia. That's such a critical issue.
I think it's so important, because I think that, anybody who's diagnosed with a, mild cognitive impairment, they feel like they're starting to lose themselves. And I think that, being able to share that, so people can support them navigating that stage in their life, because I feel like sometimes with a dementia, I feel like there's some shame involved in that. And it's just another chronic illness. And they just may not forget what they just asked you, 5 minutes ago, and they ask you that again. So I think, for the partners, it's really helpful to be able to find, those support groups, so they're not isolated as well.
We have neighbors that we've known since the early 80s. He was a retired Air Force colonel, and we've known him. She's living here in our retirement community. Yesterday was her 101st birthday.
Wow.
And we had a birthday celebration. The 100th birthday party last year was a big blowout. What Isabel says in her wonderful Southern accent, she's a Southern belle, is, hell, my mother lived to be 106. I'm still young. So you got to take life as it goes along and accept it as it is. And we were over visiting with her. They had a lovely party for her. And we brought her some gifts, and she's so excited about that.
That's wonderful. And Brenda, what type of volunteer opportunities are most popular with AARP Arizona members?
The number one volunteer opportunity that they love are tabling events for ARP. That's the number one request. I try to steer them sometime in other directions. They say to me, no, we want to do tablings. Whatever tabling event that you have got going on, sign me up. To the point where I have to sometimes say, hey, wait a minute, this event is full. Let me take you to the next one. So tabling, I think, is the number one for us. I'm going to say after that, being ARP advocates and ambassadors, for ARP. We send them out equipped to be able to tell our story. And so when they're out at these events, they can do that. But they become ambassadors, for us. We provide education to the community. They love going out giving, presentations on fraud and on caregiving. Then we also have, we do shred events. Then we got our tax aid program. We got driver safety. So there's a multitude of programs that people can get involved in. But number one, from Phoenix volunteers, are tabling events.
And just a follow-up question, what surprises people once they start volunteering?
How easy it is to sign up to become a volunteer, how easy it is then to be connected once they do become a volunteer. So those two things.
How you meet new people.
Yes.
To expand your life.
Yes, and they become friends.
That is such a critical part of volunteering.
Correct.
You find people that have great stories. They've had stories through their life.
They have shared interests. They have shared interests. And they begin to trust one another, and they begin to, follow each other in their lives. And I hear them all the time, like, well, I'm going to go have coffee, with so-and-so next week, or, she's going to pick me up and we're going to go out to lunch after the event is over with. So yes, that connection, once it's made, they develop bonds amongst themselves. And I think they do that because they came to ARP and other organizations starting out by volunteering. So.
Yeah, and it's not just ARP. There are multiple organizations that can join. I don't want to just say this is the only one. Right. There are so many that are there. Many of them that you got to struggle to find them. Once you do, they're great assets.
So I just want to give a shout out to basically a volunteer matching site that AARP created, and it's called Create the Good. And the nonprofit organizations can go on to Create the Good, and they can list their volunteer opportunities. And sometimes it's just like a one volunteer opportunity, and sometimes it could be multiple volunteer opportunities. But Create the Good, say you want to volunteer this weekend, you don't have anything to do and you want to volunteer. You can go on Create the Good. It'll show you opportunities that are available right then and there. You can sign up. And it basically matches nonprofit organizations with volunteer opportunities. If you want to volunteer with kids, it will give you that kind of thing. You want to volunteer with homeless population, it'll give you that opportunity. So I just wanted to plug to Create the Good, because you're absolutely right, Len. There's a lot of opportunities out there.
And Dana, when you volunteer, you never know what's going to happen next. Sometimes
I would just share something that happened with you, Len.
I was sitting at home a couple of years ago, got a phone call from Dana and said, would you like to go to Washington, D.C. with me? And I said, okay, when? She said, tomorrow. I said, what? So you never know what a volunteer opportunity. We actually did go to Washington, D.C. the next day. I needed my wife to suggest, go with her. She said, go. I went. It was a great opportunity. So again, volunteer, you never know what's going to come down the pike. Sometimes it's going to be expanding your life and be quite amazing.
Yes, and because of Len, you are my volunteer secret weapon, and I will say that to this day. And if it wasn't for Len and his openness to go ahead and take a last minute trip too, I knew the ask was big. I knew it was big, but I knew he was willing to possibly do it. And we went to Washington, D.C., and we helped secure that vote to get, the Medicare bill, ability to negotiate. We got that bill across the finish line in the Inflation Reduction Act.
And don't expect if you're volunteering to get a call to go to Washington, but you're probably going to get a call to do something really interesting.
Yes, it was a good thing.
Yep. You just never know.
Yep.
And we're getting close to time here, but any last minute, tips that you would like to suggest regarding staying active and connected in your communities?
I would just say reach out, if you're feeling isolated, if you are, maybe you're in a rut and you need something new and exciting. I would say, reach out for opportunities to volunteer. Reach out for opportunities, some jobs may even come from, you just reaching out if you're looking for a job maybe. But I would just say stay socially connected to people that, can help you navigate that challenge of being alone.
And I would say to Brenda, ditto. Well said. I agree with everything you said. I would have said it, but you said it better.
Thank you, Len.
And I'll just give a plug real quick because for those of you who have a smartphone, I know Len still has a flip phone, but his wife does have a smartphone. And AARP does have an app that you can go in the App Store and download called AARP Now. And that is chock full of information. You can search for events that we're doing in the community where you live across the country. And it will give you volunteer opportunities as well. But I just want to thank you both for being here today. And connection is not a luxury, it's part of healthy aging. One conversation, one volunteer opportunity, or one new friendship can make a meaningful difference. I want to thank Brenda Holt and Dr. Kirschner for joining us today and giving their perspective on social connection. Thank you again for joining AARP Arizona Desert Voice. Please join us again next month. Thank you so much.